Have you ever felt that silent shift? The moment when someone who once looked at you like you were their entire world, suddenly glances past you, as if you're just another face in the room. It's almost invisible at first. You tell yourself you're imagining things, but deep down you know, the spark in their eyes has dimmed. The warmth that used to linger in their gaze feels colder now, and it leaves you with that haunting question you can't shake. What changed? Why don't they see you the same way anymore? That moment is one of the most quietly devastating experiences you can go through. You sit with yourself, replaying conversations in your mind, scanning memories like old photographs, searching for clues you might have missed. Was it something you said? Something you failed to say? Did you stop showing up as the version of yourself they once admired? Or was it them who quietly slipped away, withdrawing piece by piece until their presence felt like absent? The truth is, when someone stops looking at you the same way, it doesn't always announce itself with loud arguments or dramatic endings. Sometimes it's in the smallest of details, the way they no longer reach for your hand automatically, how their texts feel shorter and less alive, or how their laughter no longer feels like it's meant just for you. These tiny shifts build into a silence so loud it begins to echo inside your chest, and you start wondering if you're the only one who notices. Maybe they're pretending nothing has changed. Maybe they think you won't feel the distance, the subtle pulling away. But you feel it in every unspoken word, every delayed reply, every moment they're present in body but absent in spirit. Here's the part no one tells you. This shift doesn't just leave you questioning the relationship. It makes you question yourself. You begin to look in the mirror differently, searching for the person they used to adore. You second guess your worth. You convince yourself that if you could just fix something, if you could just do more, they would return to the way they were. And in that desperate effort to hold on, you risk losing yourself piece by piece. But what if the very moment they stopped looking at you the same way wasn't a signal of your failure, but an invitation to see the truth more clearly, to finally step into the honesty of what the connection really is? Because sometimes when people stop seeing you, it's not because you've lost your light, it's because they've closed their eye. When you're in this space, it feels like being suspended between two worlds. The one you knew, filled with affection and attention, and the one you fear, where you're invisible to someone who once made you feel seen. That tension is suffocating, but it's also the exact place where transformation begins. Because here's the reality: how someone else looks at you is not the measure of your worth. Their gaze, their approval, their attention, it may have once been the mirror through which you saw yourself. But if that mirror cracks, you're not broken. You're just being asked to find a new reflection, one that comes from within you. Think about it. People evolve, emotions shift, energy changes. And while you cannot always control how someone sees you, you can always control how you see yourself. The danger is in clinging so tightly to their changing perception that you forget to hold on to your own truth. And maybe that's why you're here listening right now. Because deep down, you know you're standing at a crossroads. On one side there's the pain of being unseen, the ache of wanting them to come back to the version of themselves that adored you. On the other side there's a deeper path, the one where you reclaim yourself, where you stop chasing their gaze, and start embodying the kind of presence that doesn't depend on anyone's recognition. So let me ask you, what if this shift isn't the end of something, but the beginning of something even more powerful? What if the day they stopped looking at you the same way was the day life invited you to finally look at yourself differently, through the lens of compassion, strength, and unshakable worth? Because you are not invisible, and losing someone's gaze does not mean you've lost your light. It only means it's time to shine in a way that doesn't require their eyes to see it. You see, the real struggle isn't just that they stopped looking at you the same way. It's the silence inside that change. The unanswered questions, the sudden emptiness where reassurance used to live. You carry that silence like a weight, pretending you're fine on the outside, while inside you're breaking apart piece by piece. And it's strange, isn't it, how someone's absence, even when they're still physically there, can feel heavier than their actual leaving. Because when they're gone, you grieve. But when they stay, while their heart quietly slips away, you torture yourself with hope. You convince yourself that tomorrow things will feel different. That maybe if you love harder, try harder, hold on tighter, they'll look at you again the way they used to. But hope, when it's built on denial, can turn into self-destruction. You keep waiting for their attention to return, like a drought waiting for rain. And while you're waiting, you start to forget what your own sunlight feels like. That's the hidden danger of needing someone's gaze to validate you. It traps you in a cycle of dependency. You stop living for your own truth and start performing for theirs. Every word you say, every gesture you make, is secretly an audition for their approval. And the tragedy is, the harder you try to hold on, the further away they drift. But let's pause for a moment and imagine something different. Imagine that you stop looking outward for a second. Imagine you stop searching their eyes for proof that you matter. And instead, you turn inward. What would you see? What parts of yourself have you neglected while you were so busy chasing their fading attention? Maybe you've forgotten how it feels to sit in silence without fear. Maybe you've forgotten the things that once made you feel alive outside of them. Maybe you've given away so much of your identity to keep them, that you don't even recognize the person in the mirror anymore. And that realization is painful. But it's also liberating. Because if you've lost yourself in their shifting gaze, then you also hold the power to find yourself again. Not in their eyes, not in their approval, but in the unshakable truth that you were worthy long before they ever noticed you. Here's what you need to understand. Their inability to see you clearly doesn't mean you're invisible. It only means they've stopped paying attention. But just because someone closes their eyes to your light, doesn't mean the light stops shining. Think about it. How many times have you dimmed yourself just to keep someone comfortable? How many times have you swallowed your truth because you feared it might push them further away? And in doing so, how many times have you abandoned yourself just to avoid being abandoned by them? But you can't live in that cycle forever, because at some point, you realize that the cost of being unseen by them is far less than the cost of continuing to abandon yourself. And in that moment of realization, something powerful happens. You begin to reclaim your gaze. You stop asking, "Why don't they see me?" and start asking, "Why have I stopped seeing myself?" And when you finally dare to ask that question, you open a door to self-awareness, to healing, to the kind of growth that doesn't just make you stronger, but transforms the way you move through every connection in your life. Because here's the truth, the way people see you will always change. People project, people shift, people fall in and out of alignment with your energy. But your worth, your essence remains constant. It's not up for negotiation, it's not dependent on someone else's recognition, and it doesn't vanish just because their gaze did. So maybe this shift, as painful as it feels, is not a punishment. Maybe it's protection. Maybe it's life's way of saying stop outsourcing your value, stop begging for crumbs of attention, stop defining yourself through someone else's fading perception. Because the moment you stop clinging to their gaze, is the moment you begin to see the reflection that matters most, the one that stares back at you in the mirror. And that reflection is waiting for you to remember it. The most haunting part of when they stop looking at you the same way, is how it forces you to look at yourself differently. At first, it feels like punishment. You wonder what you did wrong, where you slipped, what flaw in you became too much for them to bear. But as that storm of questions keeps circling, something deeper begins to rise. You begin to notice the cracks you've been ignoring, the places in your own heart that have been quietly asking for your attention long before there's ever wondered. Because here's the truth, the way they see you was never the full picture. It was filtered through their own fears, their own projections, their own limitations. Maybe they once saw you as perfect because they needed someone perfect. And when your humanity showed, they pulled back. Maybe they once saw you as their anchor because they were lost. But the moment they found their footing, they no longer needed to hold on. Or maybe, just maybe, they never truly saw you at all. They only saw the reflection of what they wanted you to be. And when that reflection no longer matched, the gaze shifted. But that doesn't mean you lost yourself. It means you were freed from being trapped inside someone else's version of you. Think about that. How many times in your life have you shaped yourself to fit inside someone else's expectations? How many times have you played smaller than you are, or louder than you wanted, or softer than you felt, just so someone wouldn't stop seeing you? And in those moments, you may have kept their gaze, but you lost the one that mattered most. Your own. That's why this moment, as painful as it feels, carries a hidden invitation. An invitation to stop chasing being seen, and start practicing seeing yourself. Because when you truly see yourself, when you stand in your own presence, honor your own worth, and allow your own truth to take up space, you no longer depend on someone else's eyes to define your value. And something powerful happens when you get there. You stop fearing their silence. You stop reading between the lines of every text. You stop searching for crumbs of validation in the way they speak, the way they act, the way they avoid. You no longer bend yourself into pieces to fit into their shrinking gaze. Instead, you expand. You reclaim the parts of you that you once hid. You rediscover the passions, the dreams, the fire that existed long before they entered your life. And here's the irony: when you stop begging to be seen, you become impossible to ignore. Not because you need their attention anymore, but because the energy of someone who truly sees themselves radiates in a way no one can look away from. But even if they still don't see you, it won't matter anymore, because you'll finally understand that being overlooked by someone else is nothing compared to the tragedy of overlooking yourself. So let me ask you, what would happen if, right now, you stopped waiting for their gaze to return? What would happen if you stopped replaying the what-ifs and started asking, what now? What parts of your soul have been patiently waiting for you to come back home? Maybe it's the creativity you pushed aside because you thought they wouldn't understand. Maybe it's the friendships you neglected because you were too busy clinging to them. Maybe it's the dreams you put on hold because you thought your future depended on their presence. All of those pieces of you are still waiting, and they're calling you louder than any silence they've left behind. You don't need to run from the ache you feel. It's real, and it deserves to be honored. But don't mistake that ache as proof of your unworthiness. It isn't. It's proof of how deeply you cared, how much of yourself you gave, how willing you were to show up fully for someone else. And that's not weakness, that's courage. What hurts the most isn't that they stopped looking at you the same way, it's that you started to believe their shifting gaze was the truth about you. But it never was. You were whole before they ever saw you. You will be whole long after their eyes turn away. And maybe this is the most important reminder you'll ever carry. You don't exist to be seen. You exist to be alive, fully, unapologetically, vibrantly alive. And the day they stopped looking at you the same way may feel like a loss. But in reality, it may just be the beginning of you finally looking at yourself the way you always should have. You may not realize this yet, but the day they stopped looking at you the same way was never the day you lost everything. It was the day life gave you a mirror you'd been avoiding. A mirror that didn't ask, do they still love you, but whispered instead, do you still love yourself? Because what hurts most is not their fading eyes. It's the way you've allowed their fading eyes to make you forget your worth. You've been sitting in the shadows of someone else's absence, waiting for them to come back, waiting for them to see again what they once saw. But how long will you wait? How many sunsets will you spend hoping someone else will finally notice the light that's been burning inside you? All along, you can't keep handing your power to the shifting gaze of another human being. You can't keep giving them the authority to define whether you are radiant or invisible, worthy or forgettable. Their eyes are not the measure of your existence. Their attention is not the fuel for your soul. And if you've been living as though it is, maybe this is the wake-up call you've needed. The moment where you take a deep breath, unclench your fists, and let go not of them, but of the story that your value is tied to whether or not they still see you. Look back for a moment. Think of all the times in your life you've been overlooked, underestimated, or ignored. Maybe it was in a relationship. Maybe it was in a room where your voice was drowned out. Maybe it was in a family that never fully understood you. Each time it left a mark. Each time it taught you to crave recognition, to hunger for someone else to finally say, and yet, here you are. You survived all those moments. You kept going. Even when no one clapped, even when no one turned their head, even when no one offered the validation you thought you needed, you still breathed, you still lived, you still carried on. So ask yourself, if you've already survived invisibility before, why are you still giving it so much power now? Why are you still bending yourself for the fleeting glance of someone who may never look at you the same way again? There's a deeper truth here. Sometimes people stop seeing you because they've outgrown the chapter they once wrote you into. Sometimes they stop seeing you because your light reminds them of the shadows they're running from. Sometimes they stop seeing you because to truly see you would require them to face parts of themselves they're not ready to confront. None of that has anything to do with your worth. It has everything to do with their capacity. And you cannot keep punishing yourself for someone else's lack of capacity. You cannot keep shrinking just because they lost their vision. The day they stopped looking at you the same way can be the day you finally start looking at yourself differently. Imagine what it would feel like to wake up and not check your reflection in their eyes first. Imagine what it would feel like to stand in a room and not wonder if they're still watching. Imagine the freedom of not performing, not adjusting, not begging, just being, simply, and fully being. Because here's the paradox. The love you've been begging for, the validation you've been chasing, the attention you've been starving for, you've been holding it back from yourself. You've been so consumed by earning it from them that you've forgotten to give it to you. So pause, place your hand over your heart, breathe, and say this truth quietly to yourself. I am seen. I am worthy. I am enough. Not because they say it, not because they show it, but because you decide it, because you believe it, because you choose it. And when you choose it, something miraculous happens. You begin to heal. You begin to rise. You begin to walk differently, speak differently, carry yourself differently. Not out of arrogance, not out of defiance, but out of the calm, unshakable knowing that your worth was never negotiable. People may still come and go. Their gaze may still shift. Some will adore you. Some will misunderstand you. Some will stop looking at you altogether. But when you've reclaimed your sight, when you've chosen to look at yourself with love, you'll realize their gaze was never the point. It was only the test. And you've passed it the moment you stopped waiting and started seeing. So let the memory of their eyes drift away. Let the ache of their silence loosen its grip. Let the old story crumble and step into the new one. The one where you no longer beg to be seen, but instead choose to live in a way that makes you undeniable. Because the day they stopped looking at you the same way doesn't have to be the day you lose yourself. It can be the day you find yourself. It can be the day you finally meet the version of you that was always there waiting, radiant, alive. And maybe when you finally see yourself with clarity, you'll understand something you didn't before, that being seen by others is a gift, but being seen by yourself is freedom. And freedom, that's the kind of gaze that never fades.